The illusion of overnight success. It was a cold Monday morning in Chicago, the kind that bites through your jacket, seeps into your bones, and makes you question every life decision that dragged you out of bed. The city buzzed with ambition, but in a small, dimly lit apartment on the west side, 27-year-old Marcus Reed sat hunched over a chipped kitchen table with a half-eaten bowl of cereal and a laptop that had seen better days. He had big dreams once, he still did, buried somewhere beneath unpaid bills, job rejections, and the endless scroll of social media influencers who seemed to be living the life he wanted: success, money, recognition. It all looked so effortless. Marcus slammed a laptop shut and leaned back. Another rejection email, the third one this week. He wasn't sure what stung more, the polite form letters or the silence that followed applications, where no one even bothered to reply. He stared at the ceiling, thoughts spiraling. Maybe I'm just not meant for this, he muttered. That's when his phone buzzed. A notification from an old mentor's blog. The title read, "Small Wins Build Big Lives." Out of habit more than hope, Marcus clicked. The article started with a simple line: "You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." James Clear. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The blog talked about consistency, about how success isn't a thunderclap, a whisper. It's waking up early even when no one's watching. It's reading 10 pages a day when you could scroll Instagram. It's doing one push-up, writing one paragraph, sending one email. Small wins, repeated daily, stacking like bricks until a castle stands where once was only effort. He read it twice, then a third time. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than hopelessness. It wasn't motivation, no. Motivation was fleeting. This was something quieter, deeper, a strange kind of peace, a resolve. Marcus opened his notebook. Blank. Pages stared back. He wrote at the top, ***, day 1, small wins. Underneath, he made a list. Wake up by 6:30 a.m. Write 100 words. Apply to one job or 15 minutes. Read 5 pages of a book. It looked ridiculously simple, almost embarrassing. But for Marcus, it was everything. The next morning, the alarm rang at 6:30. He groaned, stared at the ceiling again. But this time, he got up. Small win #1. He sat by the window and typed 143 words about a short story idea he had years ago. Small win #2. He opened a job site and applied for a marketing assistant position. Not his dream job, but it was something. Small win number 3. He put on his hoodie and went for a 15-minute walk. The air was still cold, but it felt different today. Brisk, bracing, like possibility. Small win #4. And finally, he cracked open a worn-out copy of The Slight Edge and read 5 pages. Small win #5. He ended the day staring at his list. 5 check marks lined up like medals. He smiled. "I can do this," he whispered. 1 week in, Marcus had no job offers, no viral content, no miracle, but he had 700 words typed, 7 applications sent, 35 pages read, and 105 minutes of walking logged. That the world hadn't changed, but he had. Because small wins, stacked daily, had started to shift something foundational: his identity. He wasn't someone trying to become a writer. He was a writer who showed up every day on the 10th day. Something unexpected happened. As Marcus walked through the park that had become his thinking space, he saw a little girl crying on a bench beside her bike. Her knees were scraped, palms red, and the bike's chain was loose. He paused. Something in him, maybe the calm from his new routines, nudged him forward. "Hey, you okay?" he asked gently. The girl looked up and shook her head. "I fell. My bike's broken." Marcus kneeled and checked the chain. "Nah, just slipped off. Easy fix." He adjusted it, then looked at her scraped knees. "You've got warrior wounds. You must be really brave." She giggled through her tears. Her mum arrived a moment later, out of breath. "Thank you," she said, eyes wide with relief. "Most people just walk by." Marcus waved it off, but inside he felt something shift. Again, that moment didn't pay his rent, didn't get him a job, but it mattered. He mattered. Even small kindness was a win. Back home, he added a new item to his daily list: make someone's day better. The next morning, he bought a coffee for the man who swept the floors at his building. The man smiled so wide, Marcus wondered how long it had been since someone treated him like he mattered. Small wins, small acts, small steps, but every one of them added to something bigger, like drops in a bucket. Eventually it would overflow, and Marcus was ready to fill that bucket. He didn't know where the road was going yet, but he wasn't waiting for the big moment anymore. He was building it, brick by brick, page by page, day by day. Because the life he wanted wouldn't arrive like a lottery ticket. It would grow, slowly, patiently, out of every small win he chose, even when no one was watching. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus believed that was enough. The dip, when consistency feels pointless. By week 3, Marcus's routine had become second nature. He rose at 6:30, he wrote, he walked, he applied for jobs, he read, he even kept helping strangers when the opportunity presented itself. But beneath the rhythm of his new life, a creeping doubt began to whisper. Nothing had changed. No callbacks, no replies, no sudden breakthroughs, just silence. A cold, disinterested universe watching from a distance. He stared at his notebook. That Friday morning, the checkboxes were empty. Not because he hadn't done the tasks, but because for the first time, he wondered what the point was. Why check the boxes if no one cared? Why show up if nothing moved? That's when the dip hit. It was subtle at first. He hit snooze one day, skipped the walk the next, told himself he'd write later, but didn't. Small cracks in the foundation. He'd laid, "I'm tired," he mumbled, staring out the window. But it wasn't physical exhaustion. It was emotional fatigue, the kind that comes from putting in the work and seeing no reward. From showing up for a silent world. Saturday, he broke his streak. No writing, no reading, no job applications. He spent the whole day on the couch, binge old sitcoms, trying to laugh but only half. Each joke felt like a mask, covering something he didn't want to admit. He had expected more by now. Maybe not success, but momentum, recognition, anything. He opened Instagram, scrolled through endless pictures of people living their best lives. A friend from college had just been hired at a big firm in New York. Another had launched a YouTube channel that already had 10,000 subscribers. And here was Marcus, wearing the same hoodie, eating leftover noodles, feeling like a failure in disguise. He shut the phone off and buried his face in his hands. That night, he didn't sleep. His mind swirled with questions. Was I fooling myself? Is consistency a myth? Is this just a waste of time? But at 3:07 a.m., something unexpected happened. He got an email. Subject, "Your writing changed my day." It was from a stranger named Leah. She had found a short story Marcus had posted anonymously on a small writers' forum. The story of the 100-word pieces he wrote during week 1 had been about resilience, grief, and carrying on. "I don't know you." The email read, "But I read your words today while crying in a hospital hallway. My dad just got diagnosed with cancer. Your story reminded me I can keep going. Thank you." Marcus blinked at the screen. His words had reached someone, made a difference, and he hadn't even known. That's when the lesson hit him. Consistency isn't about instant reward. It's about becoming someone who keeps showing up, so that when your moment comes you're ready. The next morning, he didn't feel inspired. He felt disciplined. He checked the boxes again. Wake up by 6:30 a.m. Write 100 words, apply to one job, walk 15 minutes, read 5 pages, make someone's day better. Only this time, he added one more. Remember why you started. Weeks passed. He still didn't have a job, but he had stories, now over 5,000 words in total. He had built a small audience on that writers' forum. A few kind souls, cheering him on. He had friends now who only knew him by his words, but loved him for his heart. And one morning, as he walked to the corner store, a neighbor he barely knew nodded at him and said, "You're the guy who bought Mr. Alvarez coffee." That was kind. Marcus smiled. He hadn't noticed. But people were watching, not the whole world, but the right ones. The dip, he later wrote in his journal, isn't the enemy. It's the doorway, the test, the fire that forges the version of you that success demands. Anyone can start. The real ones stay. And Marcus was staying. He had no guarantee of when things would change, but he finally understood something profound. Every day you show up, you're proving the future right. Even when it's quiet. Even when it hurts. Even when no one claps. Because the real victory isn't found in the applause. It's found in who you become. The spark when small wins unlock big doors. Spring crept into Chicago quietly. The frost receded. The skies turned a softer shade of blue, and the once barren trees lining Marcus's neighborhood began to bloom again. There was a quiet symbolism in it, something Marcus couldn't ignore. Nature, after months of silence, was showing life again, and so was he. It was a Tuesday when the spark arrived. Marcus had posted a story, just another one of his 100-word exercises on the writers' forum he'd grown to love. This one was different though. It was raw, honest. He'd written about a father leaving, a son learning how to fix a leaky faucet alone, and realizing he could survive without the man he once idolized. He didn't expect much, but by noon it had over 200 comments. not likes, comments. People weren't just reacting, they were connecting. My dad left too. This hit hard. This felt like someone reached inside my chest. I cried reading this. Thank you. That's when the DM came. A woman named Sarah, freelance editor for a mid-size online publication, had seen his post. Do you have more like this? She asked. Marcus froze. He did. He had hundreds of pieces. Thousands of words tucked into folders, written day after day when no one was watching. He sent her 3 of his favorites. By Friday, one of them, the empty chair at Sunday dinner, was featured on the front page of the publication's website. It was about grief, but not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The grief of routines that no longer made sense after someone you love is gone. In its first day. It was read by 60,000 people. 60,000. Marcus stared at the number for an hour. Not because of vanity, but because it meant he had touched that many hearts, with his words, with his pain, with his small, daily wins. Opportunities began to ripple outward. A podcast host reached out to interview him. A local writers group invited him to speak at their library event. He got a message from a college professor who wanted to use one of his pieces in a creative writing class. He kept showing up, kept checking boxes, kept being the same Marcus, disciplined, humble, grounded. But now the world was starting to echo back. One night, while sitting at the same chipped kitchen table, Marcus received an email that stopped his breath. Subject: freelance contributor invitation, The Atlantic. They had read his latest published story and were inviting him to contribute a personal essay for an upcoming feature. He didn't cry, he just closed his eyes and whispered, I was ready. Because he was. If this had come a month ago, maybe he'd have doubted himself. But now he had earned this. Word by word, step by step, alone in the quiet. The spark wasn't just about going viral, it was about realizing he'd built the kind of writer's muscle that could withstand storms. He didn't fear blank pages anymore. He had trained for this. He looked back at that first notebook. Day 1, small wins. It looked innocent, but behind it were hundreds of pages, hundreds of walks, thousands of words, and a man who had learned not just to write, but to become. The world hadn't changed overnight. He had. And now that sparked. It wasn't a flame from the sky, it was a fire he had built, slow and steady, with sticks of effort and sparks of hope. Now it burned bright, not for fame, but for purpose. And Marcus knew the life he dreamed of wasn't ahead of him, it was already here. It had arrived through small wins, and now the doors weren't just unlocking, they were wide open. The arrival, owning the life you built. It had been 3 months since Marcus began his small wins journey. And now, for the first time in his adult life, he felt at peace with himself. Not because he had achieved some grand milestone, but because he finally understood that he was that milestone. He had become someone who didn't need external validation to feel whole. Someone who showed up for himself not out of ego, but out of love. And that changed everything. His mornings were still early, his checklist still lived on the kitchen wall. But what had shifted was the energy. The walk wasn't to escape. The writing wasn't a cry for help. It was now an offering. To the world, to others, to the version of him who once believed he wasn't enough. One Sunday, he gave a talk at a community center titled Small Wins, Big Life. 10 people showed up. He told them the truth. There is no elevator to the life you want, just steps. Tiny, repeated, sometimes boring steps. But every time you take one, you're voting for the person you want to become. People cried, and when a man named Keith approached him afterward and said, that saved me from giving up, Marcus realized something profound. His healing had become someone else's hope. He now wrote for 2 major publications. He taught a virtual workshop called the 100-Word Habit, helping aspiring writers build creative discipline. He made just enough money to pay his rent and groceries. But most importantly, he was no longer chasing some image of success, he was living it. Every moment, every habit, every word. Then came the letter. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a comment or DM. It was a handwritten letter, sent to his apartment by a woman in Oregon named Marlene. She had read his piece on grief. Her husband had passed for months. Earlier she wrote, your story sat with me on the porch while I cried. I didn't feel alone. Thank you for not giving up on your words. You reminded me not to give up on life. Marcus placed the letter in a small wooden box he now kept beside his desk. Inside were other tokens, a printed comment from his first fan, a copy of his first published piece, the rejection letters he used to fear, and a sticky note that read, Day 1, small wins. One evening, while watching the sunset from the fire escape, he realized he no longer feared failure. He no longer needed a perfect ending, because the story was already good, because he had written it, line by line, Day by day, consistency had rewritten his life, not through grand victories, but through quiet proof that you don't need to be extraordinary to live extraordinarily well, you just need to keep going. Final reflections. The world chases lightning bolts, but Marcus learned that power lives in the spark you strike daily, in silence, without applause, and one day, you'll look up and see, you built something, not because you were lucky, but because you were lucky to the work, to the mission, to yourself. The end small wins. Big life, and it all begins again. Tomorrow, wake up by 6:30 a.m., write 100 words, walk 15 minutes, read 5 pages, help someone. If you can remember why you started, keep going.